my horse riding. But that's okay, right? You can't be good at everything. Got to be bad at something. All right, so got a lot of updates today, and finally I caught up on the fatty acid topic. And as I was doing the prep, it turned into a whole kind of comprehensive review of essential fatty acids, which is what we're gonna do for the wellness part of today's meeting. But first, of course, politics. We're not going to talk about politics since but since yesterday was not necessarily a good event for this country, there is a claim apparently that one of the parties had an acute cold. And actually, interestingly, based on that, I will bring up NAD because I do think that sort of one of the most quick and fastest recovery tools that can be applied in the cases when we when we struggling return back to baseline energy wise could be NAD. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys a quick link to our website so you can go into details. And I will mention NAD particularly for several reasons. So one, as I said, it's a very quick recovery boost. The second, it is an anti-aging molecule. And today, kind of all of the wellness talk ends up by accident about anti-aging, mostly because of the fatty acid conversation. The fatty acids are critical, and they are looked upon as a critical aspect of healthy aging, and particularly deficiencies in certain essential fatty acids are linked to not a healthy aging. So that's why I'm bringing this up as well. So now off to the COVID we go. So as expected, there is a continuous uptick to the point where one of our nurses had COVID right now, and we even had to substitute for her in a clinic. So far, CDC makes a claim that uptick is very small, but there is an increase in hospitalizations and deaths, and it's significant. It's about 20-30% from in the last couple of weeks from the couple of weeks before that. Now that may be increased in absolute numbers, that may be a large, in percent increase, that may sound quite a lot, but in absolute numbers, it's a very small increase simply because we were at the very low number of cases to begin with. So that's bad news. The good news is that the bird flu seems to be at bay. I said I will be tracking. There's nothing to track. So there's one case, and there hasn't been any other cases, and there hasn't been any human to human or animal to human transmissions in addition to that one case in Mexico. So, I did reach out to my friends in BARDA, and basically everybody's saying, forget it, we're okay. So for now, again, monitor the situation. Okay, so with that, let's do the questions first before I turn to fatty acids, because I think the topics are a bit different, the COVID versus fatty acids that I'm going to talk after. Okay, so COVID question. According to the recent CDC guidelines, as a senior, I should get another booster 4 months after my last one. The date would be July 10, yet information in New York Times this week is that an update vaccine could be available in August. Should I get booster or just the new? Should I get booster and new vaccine or just the new vaccine? Okay, so all of this is sort of, let me reframe. First of all, I completely disagree with CDC guidelines. I'm very strong on that. I think that's a bogus guidelines. They're not based on evidence. They're terrible. They're basically pushing vaccines simply for one reason, I believe, because the uptake is horrible. Less than 25% of entire US got, on average, gotten the boosters of any kind. So they're struggling to get anybody boosted, and there's this general fear that the old vaccine is going to win out and we're going to have a problem. It hasn't panned out, right? So the uptick in cases has sort of slightly, translated to increase in mortality and morbidity, the hospital admissions, but it's not unexpected because that increase is consistent with total number of cases going up. And, if you predict that the vaccines are no longer uptaken by a population, then, and there is no protection, the increase should be dramatically higher. So back to your question, Cecile, don't get vaccine now. it is not going to be a new vaccine in August. It's going to be an updated booster to include everything up to the flirt. They're going to try to include the flirt. The vaccine is not going to be ready by August. I'd be shocked. Most likely it'll be in October. Why am I saying this? They're going to try to include the flirt. This newest sub-Omicron variant is going to be attempted to be included in vaccine. They need a few months to get this sorted out. Once that one is out, I do recommend that whoever have not gotten it, of course, everybody would have not gotten it, right? But whoever got a vaccine more than 6 months prior to that should be getting that new booster that's upcoming. If you had a vaccine less than 6 months, let's say you said to yourself, okay, I haven't had a booster for a while, and this summer or this spring, I'm going to go get a booster. I actually not sure. I will have to wait a little bit to give you specific guidance on that. I'm guessing I'm going to say still get the updated one. If it's been more than 4 months. But again, it's a weak spot for now because I don't actually know. I think I will judge that based on 2 factors. The factor one, and by the way, I probably should highlight myself, spotlight for everybody. Factor one is what happens with an actual, COVID itself. Are we going to see continuous increase in numbers? Maybe by the fall, we're actually going to see somewhat of a decrease from the summer. It's an uncertainty, number one. Number two, it's also not necessarily clear what's going to happen with the flirt. It may mutate again, it may not. Currently, it's a predominant strain. Will it stay predominant strain? We don't know. And the third point is even more important. Will they be on time to include the flirt? Let's say they do not include the flirt, but it's the only strain available. The vaccine is going to be useless completely, pretty much, because the prior vaccines are not covering flirt at all. They basically been shown in the most recent study as being so minimally protective that it's not even clear if it's worth it at all. Not even the only people I currently say, if you had vaccine less than 12 months ago, more than 12 months ago, and you want to get a booster only if you're traveling. So let's say you're traveling for a high-risk situation and you absolutely want to get a shot because you think that even a little bit of protection is better than not getting it. By all means, go ahead and get it. Otherwise, it's not very clear to me. If you had your typical booster back in the last fall, I would absolutely not consider anything until we know that the newest variant is included in the next booster. Hopefully this clarifies it. Okay.
Dr. Kogan,
yeah.
This is Salome. Can you repeat the last one you said? I had my last booster in October 2023.
You're fine. So you don't want to get it until the new booster comes out.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Again, there could be some exceptions from that. I don't want to be sounding like I'm telling everybody not to get the vaccine and ignore CDC recommendations. I'm repeating myself many times here, but it's okay. The only people who should be, well, first of all, you should talk to a doctor. But second, if you at the very high risk, whether you're on immune suppressant drug, you have a advanced cancer, or you have an organ transplant or something that requires immune suppressive drug, you may be in different category. But if you're just over 65, you're not. There's just no data to say that, yes, you have to get it every 4 months. In fact, you all know that we're really concerned about excessive mRNA vaccines due to potentially increased risk in microclotting and inflammatory response. So we're very careful at not overdoing the vaccines and only following the evidence, which is currently what I'm saying. Okay, I know a friend who recently got COVID. She's a senior. I sent her COVID protocol from this meetings, which includes NAD. Her main fear is long COVID, and it's taken a while, but for like 10 days now. Anything else she can do? No, she should continue this. If she has GI symptoms, and about 50% of all the patients with flirt do have a lot of GI, but it feels more like fluctuating diarrhea and constipation, like basically what something we call irritable bowel syndrome or IBS. If she has that, and that seems to linger for a very long time, up to 6 months. I've had dozens of patients with this by now. I give high dose probiotics, and usually two separate probiotics. That seems to help. Now, I'm not basing this on any evidence. I'm just explaining what I'm recommending in cases like this. If her main symptom is still more of a weakness and tiredness, yes, NAD is good. And actually, NAD shots would be even better. That's what I put up right above in that link. So, all right. Let's take one more question. We're at 2:15, and then I'll switch to my fatty acid talk. All right, good. No questions. That's good. Well, and that's good, because I don't think there's too much to update anybody on in terms of quoting. All right, so here I'm gonna, let's see, can I, oh, it's already been recorded. So, okay, so I'll figure something out, because I don't think I can record on top of the current recording. But let me know if you can, somebody let me know if you can see my screen right now. You guys see? Okay, good. I see thumbs up. That is good. So let's start the slideshow. Hopefully that will work. Okay. So, essential acids are a critically important topic. So Benita is asking, I'll address this last question. Well, Benita, I don't think we have a choice. You're 100% correct, but that's the nature of the beast. So her question was, why take the new booster in the fall if it includes a strain that likely will be gone? Well, you're asking a philosophical question to which nobody can give any answer, because that's, again, the nature of the beast. They will always be a little behind with the vaccines. The good news, though, that if they do include the new ones plus the old ones, hopefully it's better than not getting the updated one. Okay, I know I'm not answering to your liking, but it is what it is. Okay, so if you have more questions to me personally, we're gonna have to wait until the end, and then stay here, by the way. If somebody has particular questions, and as I mentioned, particularly if you're my patient and you have specific issues, just stay after, and I'll talk to you personally after the meeting individually. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so what are the essential fatty acids, and why are they called so? Well, they're called essential because we have to eat them. Anything, just like basically, let's say there are other essential nutrients could, for example, be essential amino acids. If you don't eat them, you don't eat them. You don't build your proteins because you need to eat them. So it's exactly the same story with essential fatty acids. So what are they? Well, they are a group of complex fats. They have different names. So the names are 3, 6, and 9 based on particular types of side chains, which I'm not going to discuss because it's kind of clinically irrelevant. We will spend all time if I try. Now, there are a lot of really good sources of food. Of course, some of them here on the slide, and we will go over that a couple times. So the blueberries is one of my favorite omega-3 sources. And of course, fish is oily fish is very well-known source of omega-3s. Here is a trick. And I will be quizzing everybody. So I don't know. I don't have any gifts of prizes today. I didn't think of that, but still. So what's the best source of omega-9? That's an easy question. You guys probably know about it. Put it in the chat. Do it however you want. If you rather unmute and speak up, do that. Otherwise, if I don't hear something in 10 seconds, I'll answer it myself. Somebody is not muted, by the way. And we hear a lot of background noise. I'm not sure if I have a capacity to mute the person who's not muted. Salome, I think it's you. Oh, no, you muted. Okay, thank you. Somebody is muted. Okay, so omega-9 is of course, olive oil. It's a great source of omega-9s, probably the main source of omega-9, and we're all consuming a lot of olive oil, generally speaking, right? So you see avocado here. What's in avocado? What kind of oil is it? Is it omega-3? Is it omega-6? No, neither. It's a saturated, similar to something like a coconut oil, but it's like somewhat of a different saturated fat. It's actually very good saturated fat for us. We'll come back to that. Now, most of the fruits and vegetables will have some omega-3s and potentially some omega-6. We'll come back to omega-6, but actually best sources of omega-6 are currants, well, black, red, white, nuts, particularly Brazil nuts and pine nuts, and multiple different seeds, whether it's sunflower seeds, flax seeds, etc. So deficiencies. Well, that's a huge topic. The deficiencies in EFAs tend to be linked to any organ almost. So whether it's a heart, the brain, severe deficiencies in omega-3 are closely and strongly linked to the dementias and deliriums, and can actually, and even schizophrenia. So there's a case reports when a young person with schizophrenia has a specific deficiency in omega-3 due to the enzymatic activity, which I'm going to show you in a minute, and high doses given that schizophrenia resolves. So those are individual cases, they're rare, but they have been seen, and I've seen cases like this myself. There are all kinds of skin conditions related to omega-6 deficiencies. Most common one is dry skin, itchy skin, and eczema. So that's a big one. All kinds of lung conditions, the asthmas, bronchitis, often linked to omega-6 deficiencies as well. So again, I'm giving a very, 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 very brief overview. Here's the even more interesting topic. So omega-6 are anti-proliferative molecules. So they're not only some of them anti-inflammatory and some of them pro-inflammatory. And again, we'll talk about that in a second. But they could also be anti-proliferative. So they can be cancer protective. And as you will see this talk goes through, you will realize that I'm actually gonna, at the end of this lecture, advocate more aggressively for omega-6 intake than omega-3s. And you will understand why I do so in a little bit. So, and we will talk about the fish oil study that Elisa brought up in a little bit. Meantime, let's move on. So this is my own test in 2017. So this is the NutriVal. Now, the NutriVal is not the only, apologies, it's not the only test that can assess omega-3, omega-6. It's one of the many. It's still one of my favorite ones simply because of the level of details. It's fully Medicare covered. If you have a physician, it can be ordered. It's a little bit of a work. You have to collect fasting urine and fasting blood work, but it's a pretty standard test. LabCorp and Quest do this, but they don't do this well enough. For example, they don't analyze C15 at all, critical molecule. We'll talk about that. They don't really analyze the switches. So they will just look at kind of EPA, DHA, DGLA, and a couple others, but they don't really look at the whole panel. Why is it important? You'll see next slide. So what are you noticing in my own labs? Well, you're noticing a pretty decent, everything seems to be in green. There's a arachidonic acid that seems to be lowish. That's good, right? So the arachidonic acid is inflammatory, comes from meats, comes from saturated fat, from animal foods, and it's strongly linked to increased inflammation. Now, you also notice that omega-3s that are GLA and DGLA are kind of lowish. And this actually was corresponding with why I did the test. Because when I did this test, I had some eczema and I wasn't happy about it. And I was expecting to find this. And subsequently, I increased the intake of omega-6 and my eczema resolved pretty quickly. And I'll show you a more extreme case of this in a little bit. Now, my C15, which we'll talk about, is very nice and healthy, so I don't really have to supplement. And most importantly, this total omega-3 index, which you want to have somewhere at least at 5 or make better 6 at 7.8 is pretty good. So this is a relatively normal test. Now, why? What's so important about this? What you seeing on this next slide, the way our body can generate or make all these essential fatty acids, there is a cascade. Just like there are cascades for other nutrients, like B vitamins, for example. If you're consuming a lot of seeds, nuts, you're probably going to be fine because you're going to be taking a lot of linoleic acid and a lot of linoleic acid. So the linolenic acid is a precursor to omega-3 family, and linoleic acid is a precursor to the omega-6 family. Now, this comes more from oils, but we also mentioned specific nuts and seeds like Brazil nuts. I mentioned pine nuts. Pine nuts is an amazing power food. You can find it in Whole Foods. I think you can even find it in Trader Joe. We were eating a lot of pine nuts in Russia. I'm not exactly sure why it's not really that much of a cultural food in States. At least I have not noticed it. But it's a great food. You can find it. They're very tasty, by the way. We used to actually eat them off of the cones. We used to buy them in a cone, like a pine cone, and then you can actually just kind of peel it off and eat it right off of it when they were still, fresh, not even roasted or anything like that. So the linoleic acid gets converted to gamma linoleic. That's the gamma sign. And I'm sorry if it's hard to see because it's a little bit of, and gamma linoleic acid we can purchase as supplements. So this is the evening primrose oil, borage oil, and currant oil. So this can be purchased. The DGLA, on the other hand, is not something you can obtain in supplements. The conversion here is frequently decreased. And you will, I think the case I have next has that, maybe not, I don't remember. Sometimes this enzyme elongase is not working very well in certain patients. And then you don't really have this step. You also can have a deficiency in delta-6, then you have a bigger problem because whatever you eat, whether it's nuts and seeds or, other forms of like basically other vegetables, you will not convert. Here's a fascinating thing. If you're vegan, don't get too upset because vegans somehow by the nature have the delta-6 hyper-attenuated, so it's increased. Delta-6 activity in a vegan has been shown to be higher than in non-vegans. And it makes sense because you want to make more of this downstream pathway molecules, particularly the EPA, this eicosapentaenoic acid, and then DHA, right, this last one, or docosahexaenoic acid. And the important omega-6 pathway stops at DGLA. The arachidonic acid is not important, and this one is not either. But for the omega-3 family, it keeps going down and gets here. Now, if you eat a lot of fish, and again, this is my test, and I do eat fish regularly, you will notice that EPA and DHA is going to be a lot higher than this intermediate molecule. That's because fish has EPA and DHA as actual molecules in a large amounts. That's why there's a discrepancy because you see this one kind of, normal, but low normal, but then very high levels of EPA and DHA for that exact reason, okay? I supplement rarely. I may supplement once a week with a couple of capsules of EPA and DHA, and only if I haven't had fish in a while. If I had a seafood, I usually don't do that. Okay. I think what I want to do, guys, I'm gonna not do any questions right now, right? Because otherwise I think we'll run out of time. And I do want to finish the presentation. It's almost 2:30 already. So I will keep going with my slides and then we'll do a couple of questions after. Okay, so let's move on. Why am I unable to move? Okay. All right. So this is the study that was brought up by Lisa. This is very recent, basically saying if you do not have existing cardiovascular disease, and if you take fish oil, you have a significantly increased risk of atrial fibrillation, which is not a good thing. Atrial fibrillation is an irregular heartbeat, and the increase was somewhere between 10 to 15% with very narrow confidence interval, where my error points, that's where the data is. What does that mean? Well, what the confidence interval means is that the researchers are certain that the real number falls between those two ends. And when it's so narrow, it generally implies a very strong result because it's very uniform and it's very narrow. I could not find any problems with this study. It's extremely well organized and done. It's huge. We're talking over 400,000 participants. I think this is a real finding, okay? So what does all this mean? Well, what this means is if you are taking fish oil and you don't have a cardiovascular illness, you have to think of this being a possible side effect, development of atrial fibrillation. On contrary, if you have a known heart disease, whether you had a heart attack before or you have a coronary artery disease, it appears that actually fish oil becomes protective. So what are we dealing here with? Because how could this make any sense? Well, I had to go back and dig a lot of information, think about this, and put it together in perspective. Can somebody mute yourself? We can hear background. So I went back many years ago. So in 2019, JAMA published this review by Dr. Kerfman, basically saying we are seeing increased number of randomized controlled trials looking at benefit of fish oil for cardiovascular disease, finding this atrial fibrillation trigger. So then I said, okay, well, if that's the case, what is the explanation here? Because some studies are positive, some are negative. What are we looking at? Well, and then I started noticing something really important. The studies that are negative always assess dietary sources. So they simply looked at the levels in the blood. If the level is somewhat higher, but you're eating fish and you're eating more seeds and nuts, no problems. The moment you start taking capsules, then you have a potential problem. Then I went and I tried to answer, well, in which countries are we seeing a higher chance of atrial fibrillation? Turns out that it's in parts of the Europe, the Danish studies were negative, English studies were positive. Then I looked into the relationship to mercury and I didn't find anything. The England tested their all of their fish, 100 top fish supplements about 7 years ago. They only found 9 out of 100 contained some mercury and the levels were pretty low. Okay, so that's probably not the cause. I used to think that maybe some of the side effects from fish oil capsules were into mercury category. No, it is not. So then I keep digging deeper. And then this is what I found. So it turns out that when you very carefully look at the data, turns out that omega-3s are actually destabilizing for membranes. So there's an actual clear theoretical understanding. If you're mismatching the balance between omega-3 and omega-6, omega-3 is destabilizing membranes versus omega-6 stabilizing them. There is a data from several countries. This is probably the best I could find. This is quite recent. They're basically saying increased intake omega-6 is clearly protective against atrial fibrillation or any arrhythmias for that matter. So the lesson goes like this. We are in balance. Okay, well, we'll come back to that. We're in balance constantly. And I'm increasingly over the recent years, and I will show you a case in a minute, seeing an unfortunate swing towards omega-6 deficiencies because people taking too much omega-3s. And we've always told to the public, oh, more omega-3s is better. Turns out that's not the case. The case is the balance, right? The nature created everything in balance, and you can overdose pretty much anything. You know, you can overdose cucumbers. I'm sure if there's carefully analyze cucumbers, you're going to find something in the cucumbers. I love cucumbers. I hope I never overdose them. I eat them a lot. But point being is anything in total disbalance potentially going to have risk. And this is a great lesson. And it's great lesson for me. I had to research this because I couldn't believe this result first. And now not only am I believing it, now I'm thinking this is very important contribution to the science. And Lisa, I do want to commend you for pushing me to get this. It was, you know, it's interesting how it's hard to look into something you're like, oh, come on, this can't be right, because it doesn't make any sense. And then you have to dig in and realize this is actually very right. It makes a lot of sense. By the way, why is then omega-3 becomes protective when one has cardiovascular disease? Well, because actually in that case, most of the cases of a cardiovascular disease are in an inflammatory state. Most of the heart attacks, strokes, and coronary artery disease is due to the high inflammatory response. Omega-3 is particularly EPA is potent anti-inflammatory. And if you look at the studies, there's even a drug, there's a pure EPA drug that's FDA approved for cardiovascular disease in settings of high triglycerides. Same exact reason. It's an anti-inflammatory drug, just like statin. So, but again, to me, the study highlights importance of actually consuming balanced diet and consuming just as much as omega-6 as omega-3s, okay? All right, new kid on the block, C15, we talked about this. I want to remind this since this is an essential fatty acid conversation. C15 is a saturated fat, but it's actually one of the very few beneficial saturated fat. Comes mostly in dairy. If you have not heard this podcast, please do so. If whatever your favorite podcast, this is, I I think Janet, I don't know if she was leading this, but it was Lee Frame, Dr. Frame, and I talking to Stephanie Van Watson, who's the head of this company called FETI 15 or C15, and it's a fascinating topic. So do listen to the podcast. We don't have time to go into detail. But if you want to try this, this is where you get it. I'm going to leave this here. This is the link. You'll be able to see the link, and then I'll post the link in the chat toward the end of the conversation, so if anybody wants to get it. Okay, so everything in balance. Food source is the best, always, right? Unless there's a particular reason why you should be supplementing. We'll come back to that in a minute. So omega-3 fish, berries, flax seeds, omega-6 current flax seeds, sunflower seeds, nuts, particularly pine nuts, Brazil nuts. C15, mostly fermented foods. Unfortunately, C15 is very unlikely to be present in our common diet. There are some sources of C15 that are pretty rare, not worth discussing. They're more like Latin America foods and some Asian foods. So what about supplementation? Okay, so people who should be supplementing are people who have a documented deficiencies, people who have a medical conditions where essential fatty acids are known to be beneficial. Okay, there is a potential that C15 would be good for everybody beyond certain age, but we don't have enough studies to say that for certain. But the thinking is that C15 is a potent anti-aging molecule for the brain. So that's why I'm sort of exploring this, and it so happened that NutriBell tests for C15. So we're actually initiating the study looking back into thousands of our NutriBell tests over the past 15 years or so, and see what correlation are we finding. So it's not really a clinical study, it's an assessment of data. And then we're going to try to sort of conclude, okay, X% of our clinic population is C15 deficient. And then there's going to be probably a follow-up, maybe a grant to try to actually clinically study, to basically give someone with deficiency C15 and see what happens. But that's in the future. All right, so here's a case, because I promised you I'm going to show you something. So it's exactly the same test. You see the same kind of looking picture. You actually see a kind of similar picture over here in omega-3s as to my own test, right? You see a lot of EPA, a lot of DHA, and kind of lower ALA and DPA. Now look at this. Look at so my GLA was actually about the same, but my DGLA was much higher. But in this 68-year-old woman, DGLA was super low. And guess what? The presenting complaint was chronic eczema and dry skin. Okay. So this is a very, and her C15 is completely fine, actually, if anything, a bit high. She does eat a lot of dairy. So this is a great case how you can take fish oil, not take any omega-6, and end up with a medical condition due to the fact you're taking too much fish oil and not enough omega-6. So very quick treatment for 3 months of 500 milligrams of borage oil, and this all went away. And the numbers have improved. So with that, I'm going to end. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing, put the link to C15 in the chat, and let's do 2 questions, and then we'll have 20 minutes for practice. I think that's fair, or maybe a little bit less than. I hope this was useful, by the way. I don't know. I think I went like a mile an hour, 10,000 miles an hour. I understand that. I apologize for that, but this is a very sophisticated topic. I recognize that. So if you're confused, it's okay. There's a way to sort of sort it out. You will have the slides. I'll make sure I send the slides to Janet after today, and then whoever wants them, you can actually have the slides. And of course, the video is going to be available as well. Janet have posted C15 podcast link. That's wonderful. And let me just look at the, okay, krill oil. Krill oil is a good source of omega-3s, but it's a little commercially overextended in my opinion. In my opinion, it's not a whole lot better than fish oil. It's just a lot more expensive, but it's a great source, all in all. All right.
Dr. Kogan, I have a question. It's Misha.
Sure.
You know, there's so much talk out there that I'm hearing that, you know, don't use any of canola oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil.
Yes.
So those are high in omega-6. What's the
No,
difference?
no. So they may be high in omega-6, but they are high in omega-6 that are rancid. There is no way to make those oils without basically oxidizing the oils. The problem is not the oil. The problem is how they made. If you go back hundreds of years ago, these oils were made in a very low temperature production. They were very manual labor, and the oils were used immediately. They were never stored. They were just consumed as foods, ongoing. And they were not all that common. Yes, olive oil had been in existence for thousands of years, but some of these newer oils, they're actually newer oils. And the problem with them is there's a rapidly increasing data showing they're very toxic for us, and nobody should be using them for any reason, cooking, non-cooking, it doesn't matter. That is because omega-6 is so unstable. They're even more unstable, particularly GLA, than omega-3s, or maybe just as unstable. And unfortunately, process of making them turns into lack of stability. There are a couple companies that over the years have been attempting to make a very sort of more stable extracts from flax seeds. Company Flora, for example, I think is thought to be good. But the bottom line, you're talking about the regular products in a supermarket. Absolutely not. We stopped even using grapeseed oil. Same issue. Still unstable. They're a little bit better, but not by much. So basically, what does that mean? For cooking, you're left with pretty much very few choices. If you're not afraid of saturated fats in your diet, and I will address Cecile's question in a second, you can use coconut oil, you can use butter, you can use ghee. So those are great cooking oils because they're very stable. They're saturated and they're stable. If you're absolutely avoiding saturated fat because your LDL is high or other reasons, the cardiologist told you so, then you would basically left with avocado oil and olive oil, and you don't have any more choices in essence. All these other oils, particularly things like corn, sunflower, safflower, canola. Canola is a little bit better, but not by whole much, believe it or not. All those oils should be just completely avoided. There's no place for them in our diet of any kind. It does present a big challenge when you're dining out. Most of the cooking oil you don't have a control over. I don't have a good answer to that. I really don't. So, okay. Coconut oil. Coconut oil is actually quite good. Great source of calories. Great for skin in certain situations as a moisturizer. It's good for cooking. Again, the trick is there. If you know you have pretty high cholesterol, it may not be a good choice for you because it does increase LDL, and it can increase LDL quite a bit. It's very genetically predetermined. So if you have certain types of genetics, your LDL will go up a lot more if you take a bit too much coconut oil. But we use coconut oil medically for brain diseases. It's very good to try to keep people in ketosis and fat burning zone. So it has some really good clinical applications. Good question. Pine nuts not eaten here because they're mega expensive. Really? I bet you're right. Interesting.
Yeah, they are. They're very expensive.
Huh. That's bummer. I mean, it's a pine. Like, why would they be expensive? Yeah, right. Don't get me started. In this country, certain things price-wise is like, doesn't make sense to me. But okay. I didn't grow up here. I have a right to complain, right? You don't. I'm just kidding. All right. Besides eating fish, all right, this is last questions, okay? Because we're running a bit late. Besides eating fish, maybe once or twice a week or every 2 weeks, nuts, pistachios, avocado, I also take a tablespoon of flax. Great. So now here's the difference. This is important. Venetia, you ask, well, should we take flaxseed oil? Here the question is not cooking with that. He's finding a good source, I hope, of flaxseed and taking it as a supplement. That I'm very comfortable with. Why? High quality brands that making flaxseed oil, you keep it in a fridge, you have about 3 to 6 months, pretty decent shelf life before it goes rancid, and it gives you all these high amounts of good precursors. So the trick here, you're not taking downstream molecules. You're not shifting your metabolism too much. You're taking precursors that the body will convert into the rest of essential fatty acids. It's a good strategy. I like that. I give good number of my patients either flax seeds to eat. Now, flax seeds to eat have to be ground for you to get some of these beneficial fatty acids, or you can take oils. Seeds are cheaper. Seeds are great for bowel movements as well. They add bulk, they add fiber. So again, balance. Are you in balance? You know, that I can't answer. So here's what is difficult about this topic. Everybody is individual enough that this is why I like the testing. If you come to me and you tell me, look, I have this and this and that, those conditions, I may actually say, you know what, let's run your fatty acid test because I wonder what we're going to see. And maybe you do need to supplement something very specific to correct deficiency before then you go back to the diet sources only once your deficiency is corrected. So Al, I wish I could give you a good answer. The ratio seems fine. 7 grams to 2 grams, I think that's perfectly reasonable. Is it too much? And are you swinging your pathway a certain way? Nobody will be able to answer that question to you because, again, without additional testing, I don't know. There's a lot of messages out there, but I'm gonna just kind of screen them real quick. Yep, industrial seeds oil are horrible. That just summarize it right there. So the safe oil, avocado, olive oil, yep. By the way, if you like hemp oil, it's great oil for eating, not for cooking. Again, you can put it on a salad or you can take it as a supplement, as a flaxseed oil. Do not cook any oils that have a lot of omega-6. You're gonna, or 3 for that matter. You're gonna break them down immediately and they're gonna be bad for you. Sesame oil, nope, not good for cooking either. Sesame seeds, no seed oil should be cooked. You can put them in a food, you can put them after the food is cooked, you can put them for a very short period as a flavoring, but generally don't do that. Avocado oil is fine. Coconut oil is listed in MCT, which correct. So that's exactly the point. MCTs are certain types of saturated fats, which are really, really good for us, unless, again, cholesterol balance. Okay, that is all for that. Let's center. Let me sort of take my head off, if you don't mind. It bothers me. I don't know why. I guess because cowboys don't meditate. That's not true. Maybe I should put the hat just so I can actually, challenge myself a little bit to be out of my typical element.
You're having way too much fun with that hat.
It's an original cowboy hat from our last trip to Nashville. So, okay, find comfortable space. We're gonna do some box breathing. We haven't done it in a while. If you guys forgot what that is, I will put a link to my video on box breathing from my YouTube channel in a second. But in essence, it's exactly what it is. So each part of the breath, inhale, hold, exhale, hold, is identical length. Okay. And we're going to start with count of 3, and then we're gradually going to increase it. So if you can get to count of 7 and 8, it's wonderful. If you get to count of 10, you're a champ. If you get to count 5 or 6, my recommendation, and that's all you can do, my recommendation is that you actually take this up for the next couple of weeks so that you gradually learn to slow the breath down. One of the biggest benefits of box breathing is when you gradually extend it, you're teaching the system a most balanced state of the diaphragm manipulation up and down, movement of diaphragm. We talked about other breaths, like we talked about 4, 7, 8. We talked about some other when you're using diaphragm and different, but here the diaphragm moves very symmetrical. So inhale, hold, exhale, hold, and everything is equal. So each part has the same exact count. And the benefits are pretty well documented. The best person who's been, or the most famous person who's been lately going all over this is Huberman. He's been big on this, and he has a 2-hour podcast on this one topic. So if you're really interested in that, he gives a lot of evidence, which we're going to discuss. So let's get, instead of talking, let's center down. Stretch a little if you have to. And we're going to begin. I'm going to do a count for maybe 4 or 5 breaths, and then I'm going to quiet down. And then periodically, I'm going to bring up a couple of points So just listen to, it doesn't matter whether your eyes are closed or open. You can make decision based on what's more comfortable. I'll keep them open so I can keep an eye on the screen. And let's begin. So we inhale on 1, 3, and we hold 2, 3, and exhale 2, 3, and hold 2, 3. And again, inhale and hold 2. Exhale 2, 3, and hold 2, 3. And inhale and hold 2, 3, and exhale 2, 3, and hold 2, 3. Now we're moving to 4. Inhale 2, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, and exhale 2, 3, 4, and hold 2, 3, 4. Inhale and hold 2, 3, 4, and exhale 2, 3, 4, and hold 2, 3, 4, and continue now on your pace. If you're comfortable to extending to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, go for it. Don't go above 10, no matter if it's even very comfortable for you. Simply because if you go above 10, your breath will head toward 1 breath per minute. Nothing wrong with that, but it's quite unusual. Not a lot of people can do that comfortably. Make sure you're not struggling. So if you get to a point where you begin to feel you're struggling to breathe, drop the 1 count backward. So even if it ends up being 4, it's perfectly fine. You can also skip counts if you're very comfortable at 4, but you want to go straight to 6 or 7. That's perfectly fine too. Once you found your kind of an upper number, just stay with that number, play around with eyes open and closed, play around emptying air completely so that your stomach kind of gets sucked back in on inhale and then extend it on inhale. So add abdominal breathing a little bit if you're comfortable with that. Just stay alert and keep an eye on what's changing in the body. How are you feeling? Are you feeling uplifted? Or are you feeling more tired? Or what is happening? So this breath would be really good to do 5 to 10 minutes once or twice a day. It's very balancing. Those of you who are noticing that you kind of feel very centered, and maybe you were a little bit anxious or kind of a little bit agitated before this, or just, not feeling settled, and you suddenly feel like you're much more settled. That's exactly what this practice intended to do. It's not an upper practice, it's not a downer practice. Those of you who remember 478, 478 is a very clear parasympathetic practice. It tends to boost the relaxation response. This is not. This is much more equal. It tends to, you can do it at any time. You can do it at night. It's not going to prevent you from sleeping. You can do it in the morning. It's not going to put you to sleep. So you can do it anytime. So there's no particular best time to do this during the day. And you can do it more than once if you do it for, say, 5 minutes. So let's begin to draw this to an end. I wouldn't do this breath for more than, if you've never done it, don't do it for more than 5 minutes. You can gradually grow it. Generally, if you really gotten yourself to somewhere between 8 to 10 counts each side, you probably at some point start feeling a slightly shorter breath. You don't want to get there. So you want to do this practice without any hints of struggle. Otherwise, I think it's not as productive. All right. Any reflections on how are you feeling after this? We did it for, just as I said, about 5 minutes, maybe a minute more. So.
I feel calmed down, relaxed.
Very
This is
good.
Ron.
Thanks, Ron. Anybody else? Trying to find Huberman's podcast on the box breathing. For some reason, it's not coming up right away. But Jennifer's asking who is a big proponent. Andrew Huberman is. So I don't necessarily follow everything he does, but some of the videos, some of the podcasts he does, I do like to watch or listen to. Feel more focused, more centered. Exactly. So that is very, very correct. So this is exactly how it's supposed to feel. It's an easy practice to remember. I did put my explanation in a bit more detailed and kind of a more, if you rather listen to me being guided, I'm sure there are dozens of YouTube videos on this. Sometimes it's also called the square breathing. It's the same exact thing. It simply means that each side of that breath is the same. So the square or the box, it's an identical thing. So
I was very, very happy a few months ago when I was trying to calm one of my grandnephews down, and I was saying, hey, so let's do this thing called box breathing. He's like, oh yeah, I know that. I was so they're teaching kids this stuff in school, which is a very good thing.
It was super hot as I increased the count. Linda, I don't know. I don't know why would that happen. More heat produced in the body, but I'm not sure why. Did you feel really cold before? No? Maybe some kind of, it's generally balancing. So maybe you were lacking heat and internal heat before, but it's strange, right? Because we're so hot outside right now.
Yeah, I kept getting warmer and warmer. Maybe I was holding in heat and it was helping me release it.
Maybe. That's probably the best explanation. It's better than what I could come up with.
So Cowboy Kogan is going to send me his slides so I can share them with the group.
We'll certainly do.
Just to remind everyone, we will not be meeting next week because it's a holiday weekend.
Hope everybody have a great time. Enjoy the festivities next week. It's a great barbecue, but you know, it's barbecue, so you don't have to barbecue meat. You can barbecue other things. And we'll see you a week after. Janet, do you have any, or is it too far out to tell us?
Let me go and check. Whoops. I will have to look that up later because I've been kicked out of the Google Suite, which occasionally happens, y'all. So, happy weekend. Barbecue some
Everybody,
peaches.
stay cool.
Are people
Don't
staying on to ask particular questions?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
So Janet, just you just when you
I'm gonna
leave,
stop recording.
yeah, and when you leave, don't like close for all. So
No, I'm gonna stay on. I'm just gonna stop recording.
No, you can go.